guys.
All right, here we go.
Well, to start it off, we're going to talk about JFK and why we should believe everything the government tells us, right?
Of course.
Of course. So first, we should probably just establish where everybody is at on what they think happened to JFK. Do you believe what we're being fed, or do you think it's something different?
So first, Warren report. Does anybody believe the Warren report?
I mean, it's probably easier to go the opposite way, right? Does anybody believe at all what we've been told?
No.
Okay.
Zero.
No.
Right. So, Mike, what do you think?
I'm in the camp of there was definitely a coordinated assault. There was probably 3 teams of snipers. So I do think there was gunmen, no explosives in the back of chairs.
We'll get to that. Hold on. We're not going at anyone yet.
Yeah. I'm almost to a point where I don't even think Oswald fired a weapon or
Interesting.
even had a weapon.
Okay. All right. Dave, what do you think?
I believe it was a coordinated operation between the CIA and the mafia.
Oh,
the
we're
time.
throwing the mafia in. And
Yes,
you're,
I
okay.
believe it was both those. They had vested interest to get rid of JFK.
Well, CIA, FBI.
Yeah, all the alphabet and the
used-
mafia.
Yeah, and they used mafia
Yeah.
for some things.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Brad?
All of the above. CIA, FBI, mafia. You could go further if you want, but I mean,
Secret Service
that's pretty
to a degree,
good. Secret
obviously, as
Service is in on it.
Right.
I'm kind of like not even interested in the murder of JFK just because it's so blatantly, obviously a coup, and like for us to even be talking about it kind of makes us look like we've already been captured by the coup as it is, you know.
And that's why you're on this podcast.
That's the real conspiracy. Is you gotta
Brad's coming out hot. I like it.
get people focused on the conspiracy, then they won't realize the real conspiracy.
I like it. Well, I am more on the camp of Mike and Dave here, where I think it was probably a coordinated effort to take him out for one reason or another. That's what we have to debate, I suppose, and answer no questions because CIA is going to keep it under wraps forever. But just in terms of what you said, Mike, starting with you, CIA, FBI, Mafia, you agree with a little bit too with Dave?
Yeah. Especially from things happening in the 1950s with Cuba. There was a lot of land bought by mafia and from people in the U.S. government that was taken away when Fidel Castro comes into power.
Casinos,
So
mostly.
definitely have a motive with, and especially JFK not wanting to pursue invasion of Cuba.
Right.
So a lot of people are losing a lot of money. And then you've got Vietnam going on the other side of the world, and you've got a lot of corporations like Boeing and Bell Helicopter building tons and tons of military weapons for an invasion in Vietnam that JFK is also not wanting to go into and pulling back on. So you have a lot of people who want this guy dead. And he fires the head of the CIA, Alan Dulles, who later becomes the lead investigator on his murder.
Which is a strange coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. What about the mafia part, though? So you had mentioned, Dave, a lot of people, a lot of money because of casinos.
Yeah, I mean, that's one aspect of it. I mean, there's vested interest for the U.S. to go into Cuba and invade it and basically get rid of Castro, so then that would, make more interested for the mafia to go back and like, okay, we can get our casinos back. But that's only part of it. The big part of it was JFK being an elected president. So Joe Kennedy that's how he made his money. That's how he made his empire, by bootlegging and working with the mafia and doing all that type of stuff. And that the Teamsters and the Union helped JFK get elected president.
Yeah, that's another big piece. So Robert Kennedy obviously going very hot and heavy for Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, and just him being attorney general and just going hard after the mafia, and the mafia's like, hey, we helped you get elected, and you were supposed to help us on the back end of this, but it's just kind of like getting rid of the evidence, so to speak. So lots of vested interest for the mafia to participate in the, just a cog in the machine. Probably not as heavily infiltrated as the CIA would be or the FBI would be, to get rid of JFK.
Now, let's assume that that's real. Why couldn't they just pay him off?
Pay off JFK?
Right.
Idealist. Can't pay off idealists.
Okay.
Yeah, especially a guy who really...
Well, I mean, JFK's the idealist,
Yeah.
but
I don't
he
think-
used the mob to get elected, right? I mean, I thought
No, his
we all
father
agreed that.
used money that he earned from the mafia to have, rich
So he's like
entitled
a dupe.
children.
So
Rich
he's not-
entitled children who
Yeah.
who then
Yeah.
So
became
JFK is,
president.
no, he's not an idealist, but he's a dupe.
President Kennedy, when he becomes president, Joe Kennedy's on his deathbed right near here.
Can't talk.
So he's no help. he's no connection to the mafia anymore, and these two are off on their own crusade to change America, and the mafia
I don't know if I
now
would
can
throw
no longer
idealist
control
at
them.
JFK right off the bat, but I mean, there's
Listen to his speeches.
He's very
oh yeah, for sure. His speeches are great. Yes,
Lots
definitely
of-
worth listening to.
lots of contradictory,
speeches are
lots
good.
of contradictory in terms of him and the turmoil that he had, because he wrote. So he had a thesis paper that he was writing just about how Britain messed up in terms of like kind of allowing Germany or Hitler rise to power in 1938. So he wrote a thesis paper about that, and then he later wrote a book, in after that, just saying like, yeah, they messed up in terms of doing that. So he was very like for war at the time, but once he experienced combat in World War II, and saw a lot of his his men die and save a bunch of people.
Sustained the back injury.
Yeah, I mean, that dude was ailing so much from pain and just from illness throughout his entire life, and died almost several times. But as he matured and got older and was president, I mean, he was really concerned about war and wanting to de-escalate a lot of different things. So the idealist part of him of not wanting to contribute to war and seeing like, hey, the CIA and all these guys want me to invade all these places, and I don't want anything to do with it. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
I don't think I necessarily
him.
disagree with you guys on any of those points, but
Yeah.
I mean, I just think to have that bubble of him as an idealist, like take for example his back injury. His back injury, he took a lot of drugs for that. He had this back
yeah.
strap.
Dr.
Even
Feelgood.
yeah, even once his back surgery or whatever came into play and he was doing better, he still wore the back strap. He still liked how, I don't know, like strong it made him look. He was actually wearing the back strap in the limo that day.
Yeah.
Well,
And
he had to continuously. The injury
Kind of why
was
he
that
looks
severe.
so stiff as he's going forward like this, because he's actually being constrained by his own backstrap.
Yeah.
So I mean,
But-
there's a little bit of a flaw there. You got to admit, like the guy has
for sure.
some type of either inferiority
But
complex.
the reason he
ego.
can't be bought off is because he's too strong on this ideal, and he's already decided, I'm going to shatter the CIA into a million pieces,
yeah,
Scatter
which I
take
wrote
control of the
that
FBI,
quote.
break
That's
down
definitely
all
one of my
these
favorite quotes.
organizations.
Yeah.
So when you're doing stuff like that, that's not something you can buy off.
Which is, that goes back to, one of his famous speeches talking about secret societies and everything. Like, a lot of people think, oh, he's talking about communism. No, he's talking about the infrastructure of the agencies and the alphabet agencies that are within the United States that are a secret society, so to speak, that are working towards other things, with other interest groups to make as much money as possible and to install power, in all these foreign countries and everything like that.
I mean, that
That's
speech, that
the
speech
Pax Americana that he talks about.
Right.
That's not what freedom around the world should look like.
Yeah, I mean, that speech actually did start out talking about communism. It actually was focusing on like Karl Marx and stuff like that to begin it. But yeah, for sure, it also plays in the fact that communists have that March to the Institutions plan, where they're going to take 100 years to slowly, deteriorate their capitalist enemies.
But at the same time, too, I mean, he was having a correspondence secretly with Khrushchev at the time, sending a bunch of letters back and forth with each other. And they were like, we share very similar ideas in terms of like, look, the clean and unclean can both live in this world. There is a chance for capitalist and communism to live within the world without war. There's a chance for that, but it seems like both sides are wanting to, both people within our respective countries, who are military guys or wanting to, have more power, want us to go to war. There's that, I think of 1984 as just Oceania was always at war with Eurasia. There's always that strife of war, because if you have that, then the people are easily more controlled.
Yeah, or it was like Eisenhower's exit speech talking about the military-industrial complex. So it's all part of the same idea.
But also, let's be realistic. What kind of person wants to be president? Is it really a person who wants to do good? I mean, to your point, right, Brad? Like, nobody wants to be president because they want to change the world for the better. They want to be president because they want to be the powerful guy.
Yeah,
Right.
to think that you could be president
Right.
takes a certain amount of narcissism.
Or by
Insanity.
the time you're at that point where you might be eligible to be president, you probably should have had your, ideally plan, your ideal plan already popped by the, just the how much you've learned, by that
Right.
point. I mean, anybody who's watched the Zapruder tape and heard, was it Ted Brokaw who said that like the head goes forward and then the Zapruder tape, the head goes backwards, and anybody who heard that and saw that, they're going to know that this nation is no longer what it claims to be.
Yeah,
from
which
that
is
point
an
on.
interesting angle too. A lot of people forget about the media was very much pushing the FBI and Secret Service's story about what happened, CIA story about what happened.
Yeah, so
right.
it's kind
The
of like to
Zapruder
talk
film
about.
turned a lot of things on its
But
ear.
you know what's interesting about the Zapruder film is that Dick Gregory, the comedian, is the one that presented it to the public.
Dick Gregory.
He's like, you know,
Oh, yeah,
which
on
is
the
very
show.
interesting in that aspect, just of African American comedian, just
Oh,
like going on.
okay.
I
All
forget
right.
what show it was. It was a Dick Cavett. I can't remember
Wait,
what it
he
show.
presented
Yeah,
it to
I
He's
think
the one
it
that
was- I think it was
he's the
Dick
one.
Cavett,
So
yeah,
he
he's-
was the one that released it.
he's
Or
the
first
one-
like broke it.
He's
or
the
whatever.
first one. He's the one
that's
that,
a joke.
that brought
Yeah,
it
there you go.
to
There's
the
your
public to
punchline.
show we're going to show.
Yeah.
You know, I have something special, or I have something that no one's ever really seen before, and I'm presenting it to you.
All right, so put your tinfoil hat on. Why?
Why?
Why him? Why that way?
I don't know, man.
Why would the government not come out and say, look at what happened? We know what happened. One shooter. We have proof.
Yeah, which is why you don't look at I even forget his name now, Lee Harvey Oswald. That's why you don't look at Lee Harvey Oswald, because I mean, obviously Lee Harvey Oswald didn't tell Ted Brokaw to lie to the American people. Obviously, Lee Harvey Oswald doesn't know how to put together a Warren Commission and a magic bullet, right?
Right.
So I mean,
But they did have to, fix an autopsy, and then because of one bullet that they found extra, they had to make all this fit into a narrative. They had to make sure the people doing the autopsy were people who would take orders from them, and maybe move a bullet hole from the lower back up to the neck where it looks like it might come out the front. They're told directly it's an exit wound.
so you're saying they fixed the autopsy?
Yeah,
Oh,
they
yeah.
did. They did.
They had at least 100 other doctors they could have brought in that were experts in autopsies, and they had 2 guys that had barely done any autopsies.
Uh-huh.
And they gave them a narrative before they went in to even look at the body. This is what
Is
you
it-
have to explain.
This is what you need to find.
And are
Right.
there markings? Somebody has identified markings that show that it was manipulated
So,
after the fact or something
from
Yes.
the doctors that actually worked on him,
Uh-huh.
because it was a trachea, just going into for breathing tube essentially.
over the bullet.
Over the bullet wound. So that's what they did. And so, but also too, it's just like they reported on something of what they found and what they were examining on Kennedy when they were working on him, and then after the fact, after the Bethesda doctors looked at him, the autopsy and everything like that. Then they presented their other things. So there was, doctored photographs of the head wound, of his throat and everything like that. So I'm kind of jumping ahead. I just want to, I don't know if you guys know
Yeah,
about
we
this,
might be
but-
skipping around a little
no,
bit.
but I just want to just mention one thing because I find it really interesting. Just an interesting theory in the sense of the officer that was killed. What was his name again?
Which one?
The one that Oswald allegedly shot when he was running to the movie
To the
theater.
movie theater.
Oh, Tippett.
Tippett. So interesting about that guy, which is a nice little conspiracy in and of itself, is that they called him like a JFK looking kind of guy. They called him like like JFK, like with on the police force,
Which is the wildest thing to say.
which he bore striking similar resemblance to John F. Kennedy. So the theory is that he was killed, his body was taken, and the photographs were doctored to on his body.
The
Right.
On his body.
later
Right,
autopsy
right. On his
photographs
bodies.
where his head
So-
didn't look
Right,
good
right,
out
right.
the
So-
back.
Just I don't,
So
who the
it's-
hell
so
knows if that's true.
We'll
but it's
definitely
really
get to the
interesting.
autopsy. The autopsy stuff I think is super interesting.
And a quick aside to that too. Maybe does this mean that MK Ultra came a lot earlier and Oswald was just programmed
Oh.
to shoot anybody that looked like Kennedy?
Yeah.
I got him. There he is.
There's Kennedy.
Okay,
There's
so
Kennedy.
let's go back.
Another Kennedy kill.
Let's go back to Oswald first, and then let's go to the autopsy because we're talking about whether it happened. Oswald, you're saying completely not even worth looking into Oswald whatsoever, right, Brad? Not even
yeah,
worth
we're
like the
we're
look.
talking about Tippett and the body and this and that. But obviously, if there is a larger conspiracy or a plan to make this happen, you're obviously going to take care of all aspects of it. You're going to shoot the shooter. You're going to fix the body. You're going to, do whatever it takes and
Kill
plant
relevant
whatever
witnesses.
evidence with Russia that you can. Like we've seen 6 years of Russia hoax. Why didn't they, go to that during the JFK assassination? Of course,
Well, I
they
mean,
did,
that's what
you know?
I mean. That's why he was the scapegoat.
Right.
Because he defected to the USSR, and then he came back with no real pushback.
Well,
He
but-
actually got a loan to come back to
Yeah,
the
they
United
actually,
States.
just like we saw in the last 6-7
Right,
years,
but-
we saw
but
Russia
also
hoax.
that
We're seeing
defection-
it in the JFK.
That
too.
defection was not necessarily a real defection. He could have been going there under CIA orders because when he returns
Most
to
likely.
America, he does not get debriefed by the CIA when he becomes an American citizen again.
Let's also remember that he came back with a Soviet-born woman, his wife, and you would have never gotten that in the Cold War, and somehow that flew, no problem. And she and him both lived in the United States, no issues. I mean, they were apparently keeping tabs on him. I have some documents printed out that were released as part of the whole, Kennedy assassination records. These were released a month ago, and it's just internal notes from the CIA talking about them following Oswald, listening to communications with him, but no one seems to be all that worried about him, but they're definitely watching him pretty closely.
Right. All up until the week before the assassination, because if he were on that list
Right.
of basically a watchdog list, so if he were on that list, they would have had to have removed him from Dallas. But when they took him off the list a week beforehand, now they don't need to go and extract him from Dallas. So he could be present when the president's there.
But also, too, at the same time, as not just Oswald, there were other. There was another assassination attempt that was supposed to happen. Two. That's one of them. I'm speaking of one of them. One of them's in Chicago, which is a big one to me because they arrested 2 men of the 4 that were allegedly going to assassinate Kennedy. One of them was a Marine. So very similar in the same sense of
Thomas Valley. That's one of the people I wrote down.
Yeah, huge thing in that essence, which I didn't know about until recently.
Right. He was also a Marine. He was also stationed at a similar type of base in Japan that Oswald was at. He was also in on the Fair Play for Cuba, handing out pamphlets just like Oswald was. So he was basically their Chicago patsy.
Yeah.
And then there was another one in Florida, in Tampa.
That's right. That's the other
and,
one.
I forget the guy's name. It's like Arturo something.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically also had a very similar set of records to Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, we're also talking about basically the strategy of parallel construction. So, like, I could equate it to maybe that movie Seven, and remember Morgan Freeman's character was able to pull a favor with the FBI and get a library checkout list or something like that, but that wasn't admissible as evidence, so they had to come up with some other reason to be visiting the guy's apartment. Well, that other reason is your parallel construction, right? So, your taillight's out, this cop comes by and smashes your taillight. Let's see what's in your car. Well, you need this parallel construction for everything you're planning. We saw it in Bill Clinton when he bombed that soap factory in the Sudan. Well, I mean, they probably have files and dossiers on every square inch of the planet. They have parallel construction for anything that they want to do at any time, I'm sure.
Well, and what's
so we're
interesting
seeing just
too,
a lot of these like scattered parallel storylines, and that just means that they've got a lot of cover and they've got a lot of ways
it means
out.
they had a similar plan that was going on in a lot of locations.
Right.
Because the Chicago parade route also has a very sharp turn that slows the car to 10 miles an hour, has a lot of tall buildings around it, which you wouldn't want.
Yeah,
and
with
then
our top off.
Right.
And then same in Tampa. So everyone had this slow down in the parade route, turn around a corner, and then be in basically like a 3-point sniper kill box when you come around.
So, Dave, you had mentioned this to me. I think we talked about this over the weekend briefly. You mentioned a lot of the reports just say Oswald. They don't say Lee Harvey Oswald. And in fact, the one that I printed in particular uses his last name in all caps. They assume the rest of his name, but they always just say Oswald in most of the reports, as if it's a code name because it's always in all caps.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of pieces that are redacted when they make notes on his name, which I think is very interesting. So do we think maybe that Oswald is just a code name for other people or other things that they're trying to plan, like what we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, and interestingly too, the one of the things that stopped the Chicago assassination attempt from happening was a man named Lee called in to the FBI to warn them.
I mean, if we're getting to that, then there was a report phoned in to the FBI from George Bush, who claimed he was with the CIA. And that George Bush also in all caps like that. I don't know if that's significant or if that's just their
maybe
format.
that's just a way they do names.
Well,
George Bush
Not
also
that I
didn't
was
know
in-
where he was when JFK was assassinated.
But
He was in Fort Worth.
Neither
So-
did Richard Nixon
so at the-
or Howard Hunt.
Right.
So at the time, though,
So they're the ones that did it.
George
There's
Bush,
3 right there.
George Bush was supposedly a civilian leader of the CIA in the 70s. He
Right.
took over after Casey and after the Church Commission. But you had this report back in '63, George Bush of the CIA calling in to say, I forget what the exact report said, And then when the CIA was confronted with that, they said, "Oh no, that's another George Bush." So I mean, like, and at a
Not
certain
that
point,
one.
it's like I guess you brought up 1984, and it's like, how many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
Yeah,
Is it
right.
like he's holding up 5 and he has to say 4 or something like that, or they're holding up 4 and he has to say 5, and it's the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah.
Once you swallow that lie, you've lost the ability to argue any other further point.
Yeah.
Because you've now just thrown your logic out the window.
I don't know if anybody looked into this also, but allegedly there was a call to the British intelligence an hour before JFK was killed, telling them that JFK was killed.
Yeah.
Mm.
It
There
was sent to
also,
MI5.
a newspaper released that
Yep.
was released beforehand.
So everybody seemed to know he was dead, and he hadn't even been shot yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is like very
It's that UTC time. They forgot the rounding.
Right.
very standard operating procedure.
Right.
If you think about other things that might be topics for this show at some point,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, maybe Building 7 falling down
Oh,
40
boy.
minutes before it fell
Let's
down.
not jump
stuff like that.
Okay, so Oswald's questionable. We're not totally sure. Maybe he was there. Maybe he fired it. Maybe he wasn't even there.
I
Maybe
don't,
he
I don't
doesn't
believe
exist.
I don't believe he fired anything.
Okay.
The rifle that they have in their possession is not
Not
the same
right.
rifle. Him running down the stairs, there were other people in the stairway that didn't see him.
Mm-hmm.
He was seen on the second floor being very calm while the whole thing was going on.
Yep.
So I don't think he fired a weapon. I don't think he brought a weapon with him. That weapon was planted. And it's not even the same weapon that he purchased.
So why was he there at all?
I mean, he's a parallel construction piece.
Okay, so you're
just
saying they
like the
needed
other
it.
Guys, they have them in place. I mean, you can actually go on to like Craigslist and look up like surveillance role player, and you'll find just random jobs for defense contractors to just play like somebody who sits in an area. Maybe you're gang stalking somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe you're like brushing them
That's
Well,
how
to
you
to
end
the
up in
side
a
as they
hole.
walk by or
Right.
something like
They
that.
could have given him a number
Yeah.
of reasons to be
Yeah,
there.
and then you have
And
like
at some point he was supposed to do something, but then obviously the assassination happens, and then he realizes, oh no, I'm the patsy, runs away,
Yeah.
gets to the theater, and then they catch
Yeah,
him.
where
there.
he was supposed to meet someone there, probably.
Most likely.
That was a rally point or rendezvous point.
So maybe he did it. Maybe he didn't. I think we're all siding on probably not.
well, yeah, I think we all agree
Yeah.
he didn't, or at least if he
No.
did, he wasn't successful.
Right.
and-
Even if he fired, the likelihood of him making all those shots is very, very unlikely,
And
if not impossible.
I don't know why
Before,
even use a bolt-action rifle if you're going to do something like that
right,
at such close range, too.
Well,
and before he can
And through heavy
finish,
foliage.
right,
Yeah.
and a weird caliber too. So you can't really buy that caliber anymore, but it's a very large, very heavy round,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't necessarily be the standard thing you would use ever,
Right.
but especially not something you would use to shoot somebody because it's going to be heavy. You're going to have drop, and you go through anything, and it's going to slow down a lot.
Especially since he had connections to Guy Bannister, who ran guns for Cuba and everything like that. So if he had that connection, why not just get a better gun if he's going to do something like that?
Right.
In that same essence, too. So just
So-
doesn't make sense.
And then before we can go to trial and have Oswald tell everybody that he didn't do any of it, he's shot
Yeah.
mysteriously by someone in the crowd.
He's claiming he didn't do it, and he's claiming he's a patsy all the way up until he gets shot.
But he doesn't really get to
And he's
lay out the
interrogated
facts,
for like 12 hours and there's no recording or
Right.
evidence of it.
which is weird. Cameras were shut off.
Man, we are also talking in 2023, and we saw Jeffrey Epstein not kill
That's
himself.
exactly.
I mean, like we're
Not
we're
kill
like
himself.
so far down this
Right.
storyline. It's almost like saying Santa Claus isn't real. At a
So-
certain point, we're like,
What?
And
Another episode,
There's
Brad.
a good story too about that. Is that my daughter? We told her, fairly young that Santa Claus wasn't real, and her second question was, "But what about Nick the Elf?" See, because there's so many layers of stories.
the hell is
You
Nick
have
the
to,
Elf?
like,
Yeah, hold on.
yeah, Nick or the Elf on the Shelf,
Elf on the
or
Shelf.
whatever, So
that's
there's so
real,
many
it's just
layers
What
of
about that
stories.
guy?
Just ripping one off doesn't mean that you've gotten to the bottom of it, and may actually be intended for you to rip it off. So now you're
It's
just
like,
in
well,
another trap.
That's like the whole thing of like what I usually say is like the JFK conspiracy is just the tip of the iceberg, and that's just the starting point of most people's journey. Is just
Right.
like, oh, that's fake.
Yes, true.
Then like,
Yeah.
what else is not truth? So you kind of just go
mean,
down.
It is notable because it's the beginning where they coined that phrase "conspiracy theorist."
Right.
Yeah.
and so
To
that's pretty
discredit
notable for
created by the
that.
CIA
Yeah.
to discredit
Yeah, it's
anyone
just
who
kind of-
questions the narrative.
Yeah, it's just a way to trigger people to normies, to like short circuit their thought process and just say, "Oh,
Normies.
don't go there."
I like normies. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, normies. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go, normies.
So Jack Ruby shoots Lee Harvey Oswald out of nowhere.
I think that one happened. It was on film.
Well, okay, that one definitely happens. That one definitely happens. But who is Jack Ruby? I mean,
So
a nightclub owner?
Slight mob connections.
Yes.
FBI informant.
Yes.
And then he has a very strange set of last words before he dies of cancer in prison.
Allegedly.
Right.
Allegedly
Mysteriously
cancer.
gets cancer and then dies very quickly.
Very
from it.
quickly, yep.
Just like a lot of other people associated with the
He gets
Kennedy
cancer in
assassination.
prison.
He
Dies
gets
from
cancer
in
and,
prison. Is
and
that what it
dies
is?
quickly. Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
It's
the
the
story.
same.
I'm
That
so
guy.
uninterested in what happens to
That guy
Patsy's
David
and
Ferry
Parallel
also
Construction.
that happened to him. There were several other people who
No, just-
suddenly got cancer out of nowhere and then were dead in like a few months.
Right.
Yeah.
Very aggressive cancer.
Like,
But,
a,
wow.
like a lot of
No doubt.
witnesses on the Warren report.
I mean, that is a whole nother conspiracy.
Do you have his last words on there?
Let me see if it's actually
I
on
want
here.
to
So,
tell the world the truth, and then I'm going to leave this world. Something
Yeah.
along those
Okay.
lines.
But he wanted to be transported and to specifically.
Oh yeah, because I'm in danger,
Right. He wanted
I'm
to
in
specifically
danger,
talk
yeah.
to someone in person at the White House.
which was.
And then he basically said that if he was to release the information that he had, that it would create a whole new
yeah,
world order.
yeah, it would create something. Yeah,
so the article that I printed out was just from an interview of one of Jack Ruby's best friends. At the end of the interview, this is who was this? Mary Gray McCoy said in an interview he didn't have cancer. They poisoned him. Somebody did.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Well, he had cancer. He just got poisoned with the cancer.
Well,
I got super.
why would it be
cancer.
that complicated? Though?
They
just
gave,
poison him and say it's cancer,
They gave
right?
him the cancer, so it was poisoning. But
I mean, so
cancer was just the poison.
That's a whole nother. I mean, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a whole nother level. Is like, do they have cancer that they can, have a fast-acting cancer that they can inflict? There's a lot of like deaths surrounding Julian Assange. I think a couple of them had to do with very quick cancer.
Well, and then you
so
had
there's-
multiple, oddball car accidents happening with people dying in
Right,
those.
yeah.
Right.
So there's just a lot of strange, like, out of the blue deaths. What was the other one where there was a helicopter crash?
I haven't heard that.
And there was
one.
like only one body in it was not torched from the crash.
oh, and it was. Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember the particular case.
But it also was related to the JFK assassination.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to look that one up separate because too many people died to keep track of all of them.
That's what I'm saying. This is a two-parter, not a
Yeah.
one-parter.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brad,
Hmm.
you're completely out on Oswald. You could care less about Jack Ruby.
I mean, in the sense that, like, so Jack Ruby's interesting because it's really Jack Rubenstein. He's part of the Jewish mafia that doesn't really get spoken about a lot, but Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky formed a bond in the, early part of development of the mafia, and we're seeing the outworkings of it a lot, with JFK had relationship with them. I think Nixon had very close ties as well. So, I mean, that's interesting, I think.
Right.
And it's interesting that they call him Jack Ruby. I think that's just kind of an interesting thing. We always hear, like, the Night Stalker was probably the coolest name of a criminal, but we always knew his name was, I forget now, Ramirez.
Richard
Yeah.
Ramirez.
Yeah,
Richard
Richard
Ramirez.
Ramirez.
Yeah, there you go.
Sounds
So,
like
I
a
mean,
superhero name.
I was
they
gonna
never,
say, yeah.
they never said the Night Stalker said, and once we knew it was Richard Ramirez, it's Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, right? And that's a perfect case if you wanted to use somebody's cool name. But no, instead, all our history books say Jack Ruby, so that's kind
And
of
Nixon was also very
interesting.
involved in Cuba.
Yes, yeah, Nixon's involved with China, Cuba. China's involved with the mob, too, at that time.
Right.
There's
That's
the
what I'm
Opium
saying.
Wars
That's what
are
I'm
still
saying. There's a
going
lot
on.
of vested interest for the mob to be in on, like, wanting to get rid of.
I don't think they were the
JFK.
largest piece, but
No,
they were a piece.
Right.
I think they were a pretty significant piece.
I mean, so I think if you go from a bottom up perspective, which I think you guys seem to like to go from the bottom up, I'm more of like I like the top down perspective.
Go
but-
top down.
Yeah, let's go.
but I think if you look at the bottom up perspective, there's a writer, Peter Dale Scott, and he's like super detailed. He goes into all of the documentation. He's got a lot of experience in diplomacy. I think he was like a Canadian diplomat or something like that. But he covers all of this time frame backwards and forwards. And so just for an example, he doesn't actually go in to say like, oh, it's the Club of Rome, it's the Jesuits, it's, this or that. He says he calls it the overworld. He's basically, it's not the underworld, it's the overworld. These are the elites. These are the, corporations, the leaders, the political parties that
People who hang out with Epstein.
the Epstein,
Right,
Epstein
right.
crowd. So these are the overworld, and their operations are going across our history but we are too low on the pole to actually see, the outworkings. So we might say, oh, it's a conspiracy, right? Because we're thinking of two guys in a room, but really we're just not on that level. And so there's a lot of different factions that are going against each other.
Well, it's all pieces. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. That's like what it equated to. It's like pieces. Like you think, oh, it's just how could this many people be part of it and keep it a secret? Well, it's like when you build something, for like the military, and says they're contracted pieces out, like,
compartmentalized.
Hey, so it's like they only know what they're doing. I didn't know this is my part, and I'm contributing to this, but it's really just a bigger thing that they're contributing to that they might not even know either, too, except those that are really, really high at the top.
Right. There's a few people who
at that
know
time
everything.
also, you don't have a lot of people who are, since the JFK assassination, a lot of people have been very, very skeptical about the government ever since.
Oh, yeah.
But prior to that, a lot of people weren't. So when this thing happened, they wanted to believe that, this was just one evil man who did this.
Communism.
I don't want to speak for
And they
other
also didn't
generations.
want to step outside of the boundaries of, if you were a military man, you followed the orders and you did what you did, and you don't blab your mouth. Especially if you're people who do know stuff that have top secret clearance.
When right after World War II, there would have been a huge grab of the federal government for power because now there was federal taxes, which weren't in they got money from states, but federal taxes coming out of your paycheck before World War II or during World War II, I can't remember when it was implemented. Before that, that wasn't really a thing.
When you have
didn't
the
pay.
rise of the CIA right after World War II.
Because they have money now.
Right.
Everybody's got money and they want more money.
Well, and the counterintelligence became a much larger piece of our foreign policy.
Right.
So, like, a lot of this stuff is talking about little pieces that go up into that overworld. But basically, there isn't, like, a singular overworld committee, right? And so now there's just different opposing forces in the overworld. So, like Peter Dale Scott likes to call, there's, like, a secret state and there's a security state. And so those two don't have the same aligned interests, but they're constantly duking it out over our laws, over our Constitution, without our knowledge or consent, right? And so... I mean, do you want to be chasing down a single villain, or do you want to be chasing down all the details and facts? You could go the Peter Dale Scott road, but Peter Dale Scott has been foiled at every turn. He doesn't really get very far because he's trying to hold himself accountable on a base level of facts, and he doesn't have the access. Like his book, Dallas 63, was picked up by the publisher. They had 2-year editing rights on it, and they took every day of the 2 years before they published it. So in the meantime, another book comes out and starts using inside government sources to clear the government of any of the main conspiracy points, and so he's just sitting on his hands watching this happen until his contract's up and finally gets published.
And then he looks crazy.
No, actually people do respect him.
But they helped a little bit make him look crazy to some people because they read.
Fortunately, this guy has not been scapegoated. I don't know.
He killed JFK though?
Yeah, right, probably. He's the overlord, the overlord of the overworld. So
who else would have that much information?
This feels like insider knowledge right here.
But no, so it's just like it's so it's such minutia. It's so banal, that like he's just foiled by the editor, and so then 2 years later his book comes out, but nobody will review it. So it's like they have like publishing shows, but they don't show his book when it comes out. You know what I mean?
Well, it's
All these
similar
subtle
to what they
little
did to the lawyer who was the subject of the Oliver Stone movie.
Jim Garrison.
Same thing with him. They started
Well, I mean, it's
releasing a lot of news stories about him being a whack job, and
a whole NBC.
Gotta make him seem
well,
crazy.
those are a little
Special
overt.
piece about
Those
that.
are a little like over the top, right? But I'm just saying like in the most banal ways, all they have to do is shadow ban you effectively. I mean, that's what we see nowadays. We see shadow banning. Well, that was happening back then too, but it was like
well, and there was a lot
done
of
in
muscling people too, like people who were questioning witnesses. They're pushing them around to try to say, no, you didn't hear 3 shots, or you only heard 3 shots. You didn't hear
those were
5 shots.
echoes
Those
and-
ones
Right.
behind you weren't that, and trying to force people into saying a certain thing in their interviews.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like-
maybe.
was
I mean, I
happening
don't know
as
if
well.
anybody who's like explicitly stated that that's happened to them, but yeah, I could see
Oh, yeah,
like
there's
muscling
several.
around.
Well,
Yeah.
so that's a good point of I want to get back to a point, but first, since we're on this subject, I printed out a little interview that Robert Kennedy Jr. did because he's obviously coming up a lot in the news.
Love that guy.
R.I.P.
Yeah, right. So how long does he have? So he said he said it on Joe Rogan. He said it on multiple
Take that back,
podcasts.
Dave.
He said
Yeah, I want him to live, but I
he has
don't
said
know.
multiple times the CIA killed Kennedy, killed his uncle.
Yeah.
and that his father believed it and he believes it. He's now saying it openly on podcasts.
Yeah.
He even told Joe Rogan to be careful the CIA doesn't kill him, Joe Rogan, because he's saying so many things and no one's censoring him as of right now.
Maybe a little intimidation.
It's
I don't think they'll kill
could
him.
be.
Yeah, but so let's really talk about that. How long do you think Robert Kennedy Jr. has until he either changes what he's saying or ends up dead cancer with that sudden,
Well, that might be the one thing on his side, is that if something strange were to happen to him, I mean, then it becomes so apparently obvious that
does it?
something breaks.
What if he gets cancer?
So at this rate, though, I mean,
Right?
we're so far
Same
down
kind
the
of cancer.
line. Like I said, like I don't think anybody would bat an eye if RFK Jr. took a bus ride down Daly Plaza and then got shot from the book depository by Sirhan Sirhan III. I don't think anybody cares anymore. They just like, how's my crypto doing? Nobody
Is he a
cares.
Republican or a Democrat?
He's a Democrat.
He's running a Democrat.
No, I
but
mean, that would
he
be
doesn't
their.
align
They're
with
like,
any
if it's a
Democrats.
Democrat, okay, kill him.
But I think that,
cool.
I think the thing that's different about
He's not my party.
of how things operate now in terms of how they get to people is that they discredit you. They discredit you and they shadow ban you, like you were mentioning. In that terms,
Right.
they make, because his whole thing, like his the book that he released, which is The Real Anthony Fauci. I haven't read it yet, but it was, it wasn't really. He's supposed to do book tours or do all these other kinds of things, and nothing ever happened about that.
Oh, really?
So,
I thought
yeah.
it had pretty high press coverage. I don't know. I mean,
It does, but it's not on a top seller list, even though it's clearly a top seller.
Yeah, so there's
Didn't
a
you
lot
read
of
that?
Is it?
there-
Yeah, I'm reading it right
so
now.
there's a lot of stuff in that essence. So you have to think of like, okay, well, that's how they discredit him, because
Right.
then he's anti-vax, even though he's not anti-vax. He's for vaccines, but it's just like, it's within the minutia of why he's cautious about it, or wanting to, like, let's
Right.
focus, let's investigate more, let's test this stuff out more than just releasing out to the public kind of thing. So there's that discredit kind of thing. So, and as we know with what happened with the pandemic and the release of all the vaccines and stuff, that was a huge contention thing within the United States and within the world. So it's just like that's going against them. So that's like the thing that I can say, like, that's how they're going to get him, is
Yeah.
like just to completely deplatform him completely. So that's going to be
Yeah, I mean,
that's how they assassinate him of character.
That's another conspiracy theory, though.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's another thing.
That's a whole
Deplatforming,
nother
or
thing.
what's a conspiracy theory? Deplatforming?
No, the vaccine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's
yeah.
a whole
another
other
time.
thing. That's a whole other thing.
For another time.
That's a
still-
whole
We
other
got to
thing.
stick back to JFK.
Yeah, JFK.
That's a whole other
JFK.
thing.
Yeah,
focus.
Discussion.
We're all still going through that conspiracy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to look retrospectively.
Okay, so getting to JFK. So shooter, multiple shooters, whatever it may be. Brad, I think you hold a very different opinion on the
Oh, yeah.
actual car death and what we can watch in a video. So,
I don't have the video for you to watch.
this is what I would like
have
to
it
do.
pulled up.
Do not pull this video up on the camera, because I don't know whether it'll fly or not. So don't pull this video up whatsoever. I'm going to play it. Don't jump to this cut. We're going to all watch this together. I don't want this showing up, though. Cool? All right, so here we go. So we're going to watch this together. So, Brad, I will slow it down. You want it slower, right? You were saying you want it like half
slow-mo
speed.
it, yeah.
Let's get
Brad,
it.
are you under the idea that a Secret Serviceman
No, hold
shot
on.
him?
No,
Right?
hang on.
Is
Let's let this
Sort
play.
of.
Effectively.
Sort of.
Okay. So, Brad, I'm going to
Really?
play it at half
Yeah.
speed. You tell me
Oh,
at
boy,
any point if
okay.
you want to pause. So this is the Zapruder film.
Oh, let's just zip
That's
up to where
bubbles.
his head blows up.
Oh, jeez.
So here we go.
Yeah, because there is a
It's gonna be
shot
the
definitely that hits him in the neck.
For sure,
let's
right?
Let's stop right here. and
Okay,
let's
we're
talk about
stopping
this
right here.
This
Okay,
is
so
horrible.
I already said he's like an egomaniac or has some inferiority complex or
Yes.
something like that. So
Version of this.
he had back problems, takes some surgery or whatever to fix it, but he still wears his back brace because it makes him
I don't
feel
see the
good,
connection
makes him
between
feel
being
strong.
an egomaniac and
Well, he just
having a back problem.
having the
I think
back.
he's
No,
painting
no,
a picture
it's,
of him.
he didn't need it anymore. It was no longer
think he-
necessary. But he still
Interesting.
wore it. He continued to wear it because it made him feel strong.
Do we
right?
know for sure he didn't need it anymore? That's a weird one.
I
That I don't
don't.
know.
I don't.
That's another
he-
rabbit
he
hole.
needed it.
Well, even so even if he needed it, it works even better, right? But
Okay.
But okay, so he's got his back brace here.
Yes.
Okay,
In the
so
car.
he's in the car with
Yes.
the back brace, which is why when he gets the shot through the neck, so there is a shot, somewhere the neck, something.
Okay.
So I don't know
Front
if
or
that's
back?
from the book
Well,
depository.
here, let's.
It looks.
It's
it looks
somewhere
like
right
it-
here, right? So We're here.
It's holding here.
Yeah,
Clearly, he's already something's going wrong.
He's holding here, but I
also-
mean, when you're shot, do you know where you're shot? Like, I mean, if
I can't
if
say I've
the
ever been
exit
shot.
wound's here, or if the open
You
wound.
know when you get shot.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just saying, like, if the
know when
exit
someone
wound's
blows
here,
a
the
hole
open
through your
wound's
head?
here, who knows? Who cares, right? So he's just holding right here. It's the spot that he found. It's the hole that he found, but he's really stiff. He's still like almost totally erect right there. You can see.
Yep.
A lot of people, I've seen some people say, "Oh, that's fake. He's a mannequin or something like that," because he's
he's
so stiff. You know,
yeah.
I've seen a lot of these. But he's
Well, yeah, that could be
he's
the back
stiff
brace
because
goes
his
up
back
high,
brace is
so
holding
he's
him,
got to
right?
hold the arms up.
Yeah, so it basically
But
holds
this
him.
definitely looks like the neck hit.
Yeah, because
Right,
he's
for
holding
sure,
it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I just wanted to
let's-
make that comment. So he's being held by his back brace and
But
being
I don't
held erect.
see Connolly doesn't look hit yet, right?
He's
No,
turning
he was-
around
he was,
to figure
I mean,
out what's
that's-
going on.
I mean, that's the whole thing. I'll get into
So
that
I
once
think
we
we're getting to
continue
the
on.
slow mo part now. I
I'm
suppose. I
gonna
don't
have to
know,
slow
where's
it down
that?
more. I'm at like half speed, but it really
Go
is.
into go to
It's quick. Got to do
0.5.
quarter speed. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So we're going. We're
Still
going.
kind of quick.
Something is going on here. He's not feeling great.
Connolly
Connolly's
still looks
turned
okay.
around. Jackie's checking on him. What's going on? And
That is a shot coming across.
So
100%, right?
So when you see this, the movement of Connolly is forward. So there's like a
yeah.
reverberation going forward.
Yeah.
And that's the seat as well. And for some reason this
this
film
is
doesn't
that's
have
not a
the-
good quality.
I was
It's not
gonna
the
say,
full.
It doesn't
frame.
have the full frame. So
Yeah.
there's some more
Yeah.
down below.
So
So we're
weird
not
that
seeing
this
it.
is
There's-
the first link.
So
There's an AI enhanced one.
the
that's
car
pretty
does
good.
stop.
I'm sorry.
The limousine does stop.
You mean when it has that splice?
Yeah, meaning like they stop because the secret the guys that drive in the Secret Service
Service?
driving, they do stop the car because they kind of stop to
Right,
like,
but
look to see
obviously
what's going on.
we all watched JFK's head go like this, go back, right?
Right.
Right.
And
when
at
you
that-
see
at-
a puff coming out.
Right.
Yeah, so you see that, but I'm saying like after the shot. So
Right.
it was like they slowed down a little bit. Just
So if you look at JFK, he's
I'm trying to find a better film.
oh, okay.
Keep
Okay.
talking.
Yeah, so this was a film that was uploaded to YouTube. Wasn't originally a YouTube film.
Well, anyway,
Probably
let's
some
get to your
videotape
theory
passed
of what did happen in the
Yeah,
car.
so JFK is going backwards. Connolly has a reverberation forwards, right? And so
This
what
is
do we find here?
we found a complete rabbit hole. I'm trying to find a better version of the film.
Yeah. So anyhow, the concept is that the Connolly's seat, in the back of his seat, there's like a steel bowl, and it has basically what they call a shaped charge in it, which is basically gunpowder and pellets. But it's basically like a shotgun blast that's going to be coming from that back seat, and it's going to be a sloppy hit. It's going to have a big pink puff of smoke on JFK's forehead instead of just a single entry wound. And yeah, and he's held straight up by his back brace.
So an explosion.
So neck hit.
That's the first shot.
Connolly's turning around. Jackie's checking on him. What's going on? I'm watching Connolly now.
So I don't
See?
see anything exploding from
See
here,
how he
though.
just they kind of lean forward.
Right.
I mean,
but
it was
he
a
also
subtle
gets
lean.
shot.
Right?
Well,
I
they
mean,
both get shot at the same time.
So,
I
yeah,
do
I mean,
believe that is a.
and if you look
that is
at-
true.
yeah,
but
so-
you got a
Shot
team up behind firing this way. He gets hit.
So if
You
you
got a
look
team
at
firing that way. He gets hit.
Yeah, but I think they both got shot at the same time because
I
they
do
both
too,
they
just not
both
by the
raged.
same bullet.
I think they
Right.
get shot by the same bullet though.
Oh,
I do.
Connolly himself says he doesn't think it's the same shot.
They both react at the same time, so unless they're being shot
They're
both
being
at the same
shot from
time,
different places.
both shot at the same time.
so they're being
Go back.
I guess you're
Go back
to
they're
the
being-
opinion.
they're being shot from different places if you presume what the origin is
Go
of
back
the shot.
further.
Yeah, and I was trying to find some images of the back seat of
So watch both of
Connolly's
them.
seat, but all
Right
the
there.
all the images I could find were obviously aimed where JFK was sitting and not at the back seat. Because if what you're saying is true, then the back of his seat would be blown out from whatever happened.
Well, I mean, it's a shaped charge, so it's everything's
mean-
closed off
But if it's
except
a
for the
shotgun
aimed opening.
blast-
I think there's more evidence in terms of like of 3 shooters and nothing inside the car because they replaced the windshield once they got to the hospital. So there was a bullet hole through the
I
windshield.
mean, there could be more for sure. But when you look at it as a
That's
shaped
interesting.
charge, that kind of explains the kinetics you're seeing. You're seeing Connolly go
Play it again.
forward, JFK go backwards.
yeah, I'm still
But
not seeing
also,
this.
So where
if you were to pull out from this frame more, let's see, where are we at here?
It's going to happen here in a second. Right now.
Lunges forward.
See,
goes
he
back.
gets hit, but he doesn't
Interesting.
move until after he gets hit.
Well, yeah, so like it's a delayed, the force of the blast.
Yeah. So I couldn't find any images of the back seat of that car. Back seat of, the back of Connolly's seat. But also,
They were all
every other assassination attempt they had, it was snipers.
Right.
And then even here, before where you're saying it explodes, we've got snipers. So I just don't see what's the point of. I don't know that the technology was there for them to really have a great charge like that. I think there would be more wounds on the front of Kennedy if that were the case. And then, to me, these look like just straight bullet shots.
Yeah. So what would be the why? Like let's say
to
that
do
that's
that.
true. Why do that versus just
Well,
multiple
you
shots?
definitely don't try to kill the president and fail.
Of course.
so
But you've got a kill box here of.
yeah,
of
so you got a
3
kill
guys,
box, yeah, for
potentially.
sure. And maybe it's all. Maybe that's just how brazen they are, and it's just everything. And he's got that back brace. You can target it just by pointing that shape charge, that angle, and it's big enough, wide enough blow that it'll even look like a forward exit wound, right, when it comes. But then you also see if you were to
I still
pull
think
that,
that's an entry wound. That front shot is an entry wound.
Oh yeah, so yeah, and I think a shaped charge could make that entry wound too, because it's not like a single bullet from
So
a
then
barrel.
it's-
But if
There he is lunging
we were able to pull the screen back, there's also the Secret Service driver. He looks back
I
at
don't know
Kennedy.
why. I don't know why it's all
and-
like closed up too.
Yeah, that's all the ones I'm finding now.
Yeah,
It's so
and
weird.
you can see his left hand come around, and it looks like and some people say, oh, the Secret Service driver had a gun.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that too.
There's a whole documentary about that. It's
But-
ridiculous.
But
It would be very hard to get
It's-
away with.
Right?
it's the firing pin.
It's overly blatant, I
Yeah,
think.
I'm just gonna shoot under my armpit. Hope I get him.
I don't know. There's videos. Like the guy that trains
sure.
John Wick.
From
The guy that trains John Wick, he does things under his
But-
armpit.
But I'm
Kills
just
like
curious,
5 people at once.
how do you develop this theory, or like where does this come
Well,
from?
no,
that there's a charge in the back of the seat.
Like I
That
said,
seems
there was
like
a
that just seems
video
like an
that was-
oddball thing to
I've
me.
never heard it before.
Yeah, I know. I never had either. But it was just a video that was uploaded to YouTube at one point. Obviously was not from the digital era.
Right.
A lot of these videos are passed around video cassettes for a long time.
What was the name of the user?
Well,
of that
the
video?
original
man,
film
you know,
itself
was
is
it
not
like-
that good.
When I watched it, I was like,
Cool
well,
Guy
damn,
69420
that's how that happened. And
uploaded the
then I
video.
just went on my day.
Was that the original upload? So that's kind of interesting, but I think you're putting way too much emphasis on what a shape charge really is. The advantage of a shape charge is
Here's
it hits
the
a
full-
door and it can
here's the
blow out a
full one.
key, a lock, get behind a door. But once you don't have anything, once you get a couple of inches past that, it's like a shotgun. But there's no rifling,
Which is
so you
why I
still
was
have
saying
a
you'd have a
little
lot
bit
more
of
injury to the front.
variation, right? You'd have too much variation.
Yeah, and it's definitely shot from the front because that's where does Jackie Onassis run? She runs out the back, right? So
Right, and that's the other thing too is I don't think their intent at all was to harm Jackie. So having a
course,
charge
they
like that would
should
be
be dead,
very
too.
very dangerous to hit her too.
'Cause they're
I mean, I'm sure
noble.
they didn't
'Cause-
really care if they hit her, but
because
like
they're gallant.
they weren't
and
really
chivalrous.
trying to hit her. They weren't going out of their way to hit her.
The
She didn't do
chivalrous-
anything wrong.
The Chivalrous Deep State by Mike Downey.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying like this was a very coordinated to hit JFK, and having an explosive in the back of the chair. First, the back of the chair is going to be blown out, so everybody should have known
true.
that there was an explosive there.
Well, I mean, that isn't the concept of the shaped charge, though, that it only blows out the direction that you leave open, right?
But it's
So,
very much so. It has to be up against something.
Right, yeah.
But also, you'd
Well,
have
it's
to think
bulletproof.
too that there were
limousine,
two
I'm sure. I mean,
earlier
there's plenty it
plots.
can be a-
So were they using
maybe.
the same limo at every single one,
Probably, most likely.
or do they have different limos when they landed?
Does it make a difference as long as it's the same
Well,
layout,
'cause-
right?
Well, because if
Oh, I
if
see
they
what
were
you're
going to
saying
have the
for his
charge
theory.
in the back of the chair, then you'd need to have that limo in Chicago. You need to bring it to Tampa, and you need to bring it to Dallas. You have to have the same car. Otherwise, you have to load a
'cause you're talking
charge
about the
into three
other-
different
You're talking
cars.
about the other parallel constructions or something like that, or I don't know.
Yeah,
how you
the
bring all
other
these-
the other two attempts that he didn't end up going to Chicago, and then he didn't end up doing the motorcade in in Tampa.
Well,
So
I mean, you're also assuming that those are parallel constructions directly.
well, they all had very similar plans.
Right.
Right.
Well, I mean, okay.
So if you're
Great.
trying the plan
I love-
out and it fails the first time, and then you
I
get
love
thwarted the
talking
second
about
time.
plans. Plans actually reveal intentions, so that's fantastic. Because like,
Yes.
if you go to like Operation Northwoods, they had planned to make a plane blow up a building in Miami and blame it on Castro, and very very shortly after that,
Oh,
we see that same
CIA.
plan in New York. So yeah, definitely plans are
that's
great.
what the helicopter one was. It was the leader of the Congo at the time
Oh,
when they
I don't know about this.
because Kennedy was also trying to have like a democratic peace in the Congo, and before he could get there, the CIA had lied to him about a coup that was happening there. This is also under Allen Dulles.
Right.
And so they had to kill the leader of the Congo and get rid of his body before Kennedy could do anything to stop the coup that they had already started.
So the CIA, the FBI, the mafia, they all are in cahoots. They kill JFK. Do they get what they want in the end, though? What happens right after that?
Vietnam.
So like 2 days after, they initiate a plan to expand the war in Vietnam.
Right. And so there was a security memo. It was like
262.
No, 263 was the original, and 273 is the one that it states that we wanted to train soldiers in South Korea to be able to fight North Korea. President Johnson himself scribbles it out, rewrites it to say American troops can enter into Vietnam.
So is Johnson placed?
Johnson's part of this.
You think he's ready to go?
So,
or is he too stupid?
It's one of the first things he does after he becomes president.
So when I was a teenager, there was a History Channel special that aired in the 80s. I think it was like 85, 87 or something like that, called JFK and the Men Who Killed Kennedy. So it was like a 6-part, 8-part documentary. So when Netflix still had, the rental for DVDs and stuff, I rented.
You can still get that, by the way.
I rented all of them. Yeah, but it was really hard to find because there were certain episodes that they didn't send out to you. So I had to find them online or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but there was a woman who was a mistress of LBJ, claimed to be at least, saying that LBJ was the orchestrator or big part of JFK being assassinated. So that's a whole nother kind of like getting into the weeds kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think there was another thing with LBJ talking to the French prime minister or president, whatever that office is over there, and saying that it was not a single gunman. So there's a recorded conversation of that as well, or not a recorded one, but the French prime minister or whatever said that Lyndon Johnson had told him that.
Right. So with all that said, why do the people not want to revolt against the government and the CIA, Brad? I'll start with you.
I don't know. It's the weirdest thing to discover that, like, shortly after this, they had a church commission that ran a hearing against the CIA and its operations inside of the domestic United States.
Which is illegal.
And it was aired prime time, and all our parents watched it. So I don't know how we got here from there.
I tell you exactly what happened. Hey, what else is on TV? That's exactly what happened.
But there was only 3 channels, and supposedly all 3 channels should have covered this, I think.
This is boring.
I don't
going
know.
outside.
Listening to the radio.
Yeah, maybe. War of the Worlds. Aliens are coming.
Right.
Which brings us to Operation Bluebeam.
Oh, no. Full circle. We'll get to that later.
No, but I think this, at the time, the Zapruder film didn't come out right away. That wasn't until more than 10 years later.
Yeah.
A lot of the documents that were released, there were a bunch released in 1975 that directly conflicted with the Warren Commission report. So at the time, there wasn't as much information, and you didn't have online research. You didn't have nut jobs with nothing to do in their mom's basement, like researching JFK assassination.
Right.
So the news was telling them. The news was a believable thing at the time, for the most part. So
it was Geraldo.
Oh.
Yeah, so like...
so I think you just have people thinking that the government's telling them the truth, thinking they have no reason to lie, and just it's a terrible tragedy. So it's crazy how saddened the whole world was at the event itself.
He was loved, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was like a very
Worldwide.
loved president. That whole family was like America's royalty, I think is what they used to call him.
Yeah,
right?
they were
Camelot.
Yeah.
Camelot, yeah. So
When I first, got into this whole thing, it was, obviously the JFK movie, I'm sure, is everybody else
Yeah.
too,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
For sure.
And so, you see that thing, and it's all about the Zapruder film. And I don't find out until, 5 years ago that the Zapruder film didn't air immediately. I'm like,
Right.
wait, we're in the era.
Yeah,
Everything
it wasn't
is
until,
aired, in a
1976 or
24-hour
something
news
like
cycle.
75, March 3rd,
75.
1975.
With Geraldo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
With the sweet mustache.
I think I mentioned it before, but apparently, I guess Ted Brokaw, I think is the name.
Brokaw?
Brokaw?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyhow, he was, or I don't know, maybe I got it wrong. I don't want to. I don't want to.
These are just, we don't
But-
know anything,
Yeah.
guys.
Ted
Just don't
Koppel.
know that.
Random
Maybe it was
thoughts.
Ted Koppel. But anyhow, he was watching the Zapruder film for the American public, and that's where he's like, you can see the head go forward, and he's talking about basically everything lining up with Lee Harvey Oswald's story.
Right.
And so this Zapruder film gets released a couple of years later, and that should have been the writing on the
Right.
wall for Ted Koppel. But
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Well,
the
I mean-
guy went on
it's just,
to like
it's
run
just, but that's
news
just, but
for
that's just normal.
30 years.
But that's just normal operation for
Status
for within
quo.
the CIA in and of itself with
Well,
Project
and-
Mockingbird. I mean, of having
Oh, yeah, right, yeah,
infiltrated,
right.
you know, throughout all.
But I
the,
was just
Well, how
talking
many
about
people
our
at the
parents.
time
Oh,
actually
talking
read
about,
through
like,
the whole
the public,
Warren
you know?
Commission report either?
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Right.
Did it like they're like, oh, it was one bullet, but like, did anybody like, let me see the diagrams? You know, I just don't think that was happening at the time.
yeah, I mean, it's just you have.
Or even if you were to look at just like people going to school to be journalists, like they didn't
Right.
co-opt
No,
every single
no,
person
I
on the
mean-
planet, like, and there just should have been some pushback. I don't know
mean,
why
yeah,
there wasn't.
you
I
had a
can't
lot-
explain
you had a
that
lot
to
going
me.
on. I mean-
I think it's just there was more trust in the institutions at the time.
Yeah, I
There
mean,
was.
But then there's a hard
Deterring.
revolt right after because of the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Vietnam War,
And then
also
they-
civil rights. I
they
mean, just-
completely- lose
partly,
control.
yeah, the assassination. You've got the
Yep.
civil rights movement. You got
I mean,
Vietnam.
you had
a lot of things
four
happening.
major assassinations in the 60s. Yeah, JFK was the first one.
yeah.
Then you had
Martin Luther King?
Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and then Robert F.
RFK.
Kennedy. So you had four huge assassinations that changed the course of history.
Yep.
Yeah. So have we recovered?
No,
No.
Not at all. I think we're
We're
worse
still
off.
under mob
that's
rule.
why we're sitting here.
It's funny because now they don't have to shoot anybody. They just have to discredit them
That's
to the
what
point
I'm
where
saying.
everybody goes,
That's what
"Oh,
I'm
that
saying.
person's crazy."
It's so much cleaner. It's so much easier, and it's so. I mean, one can say that MK Ultra was, you know, absolutely successful when in every way possible. You know,
I mean-
you don't need to drug people. You just need to program them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we just watched FTX blow up and Silicon Bank blow up, and they dwarfed the 2008 financial crisis. And 2008 brought all of our leaders to their knees, almost crying on TV. Did you see anything happen in the last 3 months? No, I didn't see anybody even reference it.
We're just closer to a recession, or we're in one, or
We're not in
Right.
a recession.
Yeah.
There
Just
is
look over
none.
here.
It's just accelerated so
Recession
much.
never happened.
Right. It's all
Yeah.
fake.
there
It's
is
all
no
fake.
spoon.
I think, I think that the conveyor belt has just accelerated so much. There's just no getting off of it anymore, right? And the ones of us that have gotten off, there's no way for us to pace it and try to grab anybody else. You know, we're just kind of
So when are the
worlds.
aliens coming?
Episode
When-
3.
When there's no more limited hangouts to be had, and the jig is almost up, and everything's about to go pear-shaped.
Oh,
That's
interesting.
when the aliens come.
So when things are right on the verge of like all-out revolt.
Yep, that's Operation Bluebeam. And
Interdimensional
it will
pedophiles.
happen because
Interesting.
I saw Operation COVID happen. So Operation Bluebeam will happen.
It had to have had a better name than that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
Operation Tits Up.
well, those are all great discussion points for future episodes. Does anyone have anything they want to sign off with or finish with? Thoughts on this whole thing?
Yes. Don't believe us. Don't take our word for it. Do your own research.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of idiots that don't know what we're talking about. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. We just did some research online. You can do it too.
Or just enjoy the carnival.
Strap
What are you
in
really
and-
going to do do about it?
Maybe
That's
this
right.
should be like the Grain of Salt podcast.
Right.
I don't want to put anybody into more knowledge than they need. Just enjoy it.
Who's in charge? We don't know. As long as you don't care, we don't care either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Just like, comment, subscribe.
That's right. Stay tuned for episode 2, which we'll figure out what we're going to talk about. And at some point, we'll talk about aliens, right, Brad?
I mean, if you guys want,
I do.
but I
Oh,
don't.
yeah.
I do.
Oh, I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, me too.
Bigfoot. We got a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah, tons.
Well, we'll talk about Bigfoot in another episode, too. He's 100% real. All right.